somewhere on this planet right now an animal is solving a problem that should be impossible for it. A crow is bending a piece of wire into a hook to fish food out of a tube. An octopus is unscrewing a jar from the inside to escape a tank. A dolphin is teaching its calf to wear a sponge on its nose so it doesn't get scraped hunting on the seafloor. None of these animals built a city. None of them wrote anything down. And for a long time, the question wasn't why humans became this intelligent. The question was why nothing else did too. This is the story of what it would actually take for another species to become what you are, and how close some of them already came. Start with the assumption most people carry around without examining it. Intelligence, the story goes, is the finish line of evolution, and humans crossed it first because we were simply better at surviving. That's not quite true. Evolution doesn't aim at intelligence. It aims at whatever keeps an organism alive long enough to reproduce. And enormous brains are expensive. Your brain, at roughly 2% of your body weight, burns around 20% of your daily energy. For most species, across most of evolutionary history, that trade was a terrible deal. So the real question isn't why you're smart, it's what specific, narrow set of circumstances made that terrible deal suddenly worth making. So what if the dice had landed differently, for a different species entirely? Start with the animal that came closest without even leaving the primate family. Neanderthals weren't a lesser draft of humans. Their brains were, on average, slightly larger than yours. They made tools, controlled fire, buried their dead, and there's growing evidence championed by researchers like Ian Tattersall that they used pigments and ornamentation in ways that suggest symbolic thought. For roughly 300,000 years, they lived successfully across Europe and Asia, adapted to Ice Age climates that would kill an unprepared modern human within days. And then, roughly 40,000 years ago, they vanished, not through some dramatic extinction event, but through a slow demographic squeeze as modern humans expanded into their territory, interbred with them, and outcompeted them for resources. What if that competition had gone differently? What if Neanderthal populations had remained larger, more isolated with more time? You're not looking at a species that failed to develop intelligence. You're looking at a species that developed something close to it on a nearly parallel track and simply ran out of room before it could go further. Now look somewhere much stranger, underwater, at an animal separated from you by roughly 600 million years of evolutionary divergence. The octopus. Philosopher and diver Peter Godfrey-Smith has spent years studying octopus cognition and describes them as the closest thing on Earth to meeting an alien intelligence because their nervous system evolved complexity almost entirely independently from ours. 2/3 of an octopus's neurons aren't even in its brain. They're distributed through its arms, each one capable of semi-independent problem solving. Octopuses use tools. They recognize individual human faces. They escape enclosures that should be impossible for an invertebrate to understand. So why isn't there an octopus civilization at the bottom of the ocean? Here's the twist. And it's not about intelligence at all. It's about time. Most octopus species live only 1 to 2 years. They reproduce once and then they die shortly after. There is no grandmother octopus passing down decades of accumulated knowledge to a new generation. Culture, the accumulation of knowledge across generations, is arguably as important to human intelligence as raw brain power itself. An octopus can be brilliant and completely alone with that brilliance. Every generation restarts from zero. Intelligence without inheritance is a candle that gets relit constantly, never a fire that gets passed forward. Compare that to corvids, crows, and ravens, birds separated from mammals by roughly 300 million years of evolution, and yet capable of tool use, planning for the future, and what researcher Nicola Clayton has described as a form of episodic memory once thought unique to humans. Crows can be taught to trade tokens for food, understand cause and effect in multi-step tasks, and pass specific knowledge like which humans are dangerous down to their offspring. They have something octopuses don't: long lifespans, social groups, and multi-generational learning. What they don't have is what stopped them from going further: hands, or anything close to them. A crow can be as clever as you like. Without a limb capable of fine, dexterous manipulation, that intelligence has almost nowhere to go. You can imagine a brilliant idea. You can't build a wheel with a beak. This is where the real answer starts to take shape. Human intelligence wasn't one lucky trait. It was several unlikely things arriving in the same species at the same time. A long lifespan for cultural transmission like corvids have, complex social group living that rewards tracking relationships and cooperating. A pattern researcher, Robin Dunbar, has spent decades studying under what's called the social brain hypothesis, arguing that primate brain size correlates closely with the complexity of the social groups they navigate, and crucially, hands. Precise, dexterous, tool-making hands freed up because an earlier ancestor started walking upright. Remove any one of those ingredients and you likely don't get what you're reading this with right now. Octopuses have dexterity and problem solving, but no lifespan for culture. Crows have lifespan and social complexity, but no hands. Neanderthals had nearly everything: brains, hands, social structure, and still lost the specific demographic race that determined who got to keep developing and who didn't. You've probably assumed at some point that human intelligence was inevitable. The natural endpoint evolution was always building toward. It wasn't. It was a narrow, improbable convergence of traits that almost never happens, and even when it started happening twice, in humans and Neanderthals, only one version survived long enough to become what you're using to read this sentence right now. Think about how easily any one of those pieces could have gone missing. A slightly different climate event, a slightly larger Neanderthal population, a different evolutionary pressure that gave octopuses 10 more years of life instead of 2. Intelligence like yours isn't a guarantee written into evolution. It's closer to a lightning strike, one that happened to hit a species with just the right combination of hands, time, and social pressure to catch and hold the spark instead of losing it. So the next time you watch a crow solve a puzzle or an octopus slip through a gap that shouldn't exist, you're not just watching an animal being surprisingly clever. You're watching a species standing at the edge of the same narrow doorway your own ancestors managed to walk through, missing just one or two of the pieces that would let it follow you all the way in. Somewhere on this planet right now, evolution might already be quietly assembling the next set of pieces, in some species you'd never expect. It took your ancestors millions of years to walk through that doorway. There's no reason to assume you're the last one who ever will.